Hi, everybody. This is Tattoo Consciousness. I'm here with Miranda. We are at Sacred Soul Collective in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Some people don't know where Oklahoma is.
You'd think, the answer's in the name, right?
Yeah, but I don't know. One of my best friend's sister, she was like, Ola. And my best friend was like, you mean Oklahoma? Yeah, and she was like, yeah, that place where Ava lives. So
you're like,
some people, yeah, some people don't know. So
see, I had a friend from the UK that thought I lived in Ohio. She thought Ohio and Oklahoma were the same thing. And one time she met me at the airport and she had a sign that said for Ohio, going to Ohio, something like that. And it was so funny. So
oh my gosh.
It's a common mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so this is episode 14. This is your episode. Yeah, everybody's lucky number. Every time I interview them, they're like, this is my number.
It's going to be now. It wasn't before, but.
Oh, okay. So this is the first question I ask everybody on the podcast.
Okay.
Would you introduce yourself and what style you do and what your influences are?
Okay. My name's Miranda. Been tattooing about 8 years now, a little over. Style-wise, I would say I go more illustrative, black work, pretty much anything that comes from nature too is right up my alley. Mushrooms, botanicals, florals, anything along those lines. Things I don't like to do is realism and stuff like that, but I'll kind of dabble here and there.
Yeah.
Just about everything.
What are some of your influences?
Influences, I would say some of my top ones would just be looking at different animation styles, different line work and illustrative type styles, even from sketchbook stuff to, anything else like that. Art history has been a really big influence for me too.
Speaking
I love doing
of art
stuff
history,
like that. Yes.
You went to art school. Please tell us about that.
So I did. I'm a art school dropout. Made it one semester strong. So yeah, I'm an art school dropout. I did one semester of graphic design because, little old me trying to make it as an artist in the world, I was thinking how can I not starve? So graphic design seemed to be the most readily available thing. It's not like you can go to your high school counselor and say hey, I want to be a tattoo artist, because it would probably be what? I don't know how to help you, right? There's just there's no resources in place for that, at least when I was in high school. So I did one semester of graphic design at Kansas State University, which is not an art school by any means. It's more of let's say an agriculture school. So the art program, I was the only person in the entire building with a single tattoo. People would come up to me and be like, oh my God, is that a tattoo? I've never seen one in person. I'm thinking in the art building, I'm supposed to be surrounded by other people that are, kind of more my speed a little bit. And the fact that they had never even seen a tattoo, I just felt so weird and so out of place. And of course, the first semester is when you're just doing the intro courses and stuff like that. So I didn't even really get heavy into the graphic design classes, but there was a pivotal moment where I had to write a paper and I was told to interview 2 artists of my choosing. I lived in Kansas at the time, obviously for Kansas State. So I chose a local painter who's really well known. Any of the nice restaurants in town would have her paintings and stuff like that. So I found a way to contact her, sent her some questions and kind of interviewed her. Then I interviewed my tattoo artist at the time, who was in Dallas, Texas. I believe she still is. But anyways, their answers were so vastly different that I was maybe something's up here. Maybe I should investigate this tattooing thing more, because it was always something I was interested in. I was getting tattooed. I grew up idolizing tattoo artists and stuff like that, but I just didn't have the resources or the know-how. Yeah. So the answer on the paper from the painter was yeah, in a good year, maybe I sell 2 or 3 paintings, and if my husband didn't have a good job, I wouldn't be able to feed our kids. It's just really hard. And I was oh no, it was starving artist trope. And I was oh no. And she had a MFA, a master's in fine arts and stuff. And I was whew, this is really stressful. So then interviewing the tattoo artist, she's I have a great life. I meet interesting people every day. I get paid to draw and tattoo. It's amazing. Me and my fiance have an awesome time. Our daughter is so happy. This is amazing. I get to travel. I get to guest spot. I get to see new cities. And that was the turning point where I was wow, okay. So then I started picking her brain on kind of
vastly different.
More. Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of my turning point. And then at the end of the semester, I pulled all my classes and unenrolled from
Do you
college.
think it gave you any viable skills at all for that one semester, or do you think you could have just skipped it?
I think I could have just skipped it, honestly. Gave me the perspective of just feeling really weird in Kansas, and that was maybe about all I got from it.
Yeah. I feel kind of lesser than sometimes when I'm talking to people on the podcast, because I was told, don't go to art college and just go into tattooing.
Sure.
And every single person I've interviewed went to art college.
And you're like, wow.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh, should I have done that? So you're the first person that I think I've talked to who was like, yeah. And I also think a lot of people don't think about the viability of it.
Exactly.
Because like I was poor, so I don't know how I would have even done that.
And economically, like going through your tattoo apprenticeship anyways is a really difficult time.
Yeah.
So you're not making like a full wage. Like, I don't know, it's obviously different at every shop. But the shop I was in, I could only charge a $10 setup fee. If the client chose to tip, they could tip. But if they didn't, then I was just like making no money for the
How
day.
long did you have to do that
For an entire year.
Holy shit.
So it's like I couldn't have also like gone to school part-time or even full-time or anything like that. Tried to keep a part-time job and then try to be at the shop like 40 hours a week. Like there's just no way. So yeah, I didn't see it as a viable option for me.
I think honestly, what I never even, I had like one art teacher and that was it. And she didn't do portraits. So when I started getting into portraits, amazing. I love her to this day. I'm going to tattoo her when I go to Colorado. But she just didn't do them. So at one point we just had to part ways. And so YouTube and books was like what taught me.
YouTube Academy, man.
Dude, yeah, for real. Like,
I'm not saying you should learn to tattoo off of YouTube. I'm like, let me just throw that disclaimer in there.
But art.
Yeah, you can learn color theory, art history, composition, any of that stuff. Like you can go to your local library and pull probably 30 different books on it easily, just like that. Like there are resources that are accessible. And also I feel like the best way to learn is just by sitting down with other artists, whether they're tattooers or not.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can learn something from everybody, no matter if they just started their art career a year ago or if they've been at it for 20 years. So.
I mean, even during my hours, I'd go onto YouTube and be like, tattoo documentary. Right. I wanted to learn the history of it to, make myself feel smart. Like, oh, look, I'm so into my craft. So.
We should make each other a YouTube Academy certificate so that we could be accredited. Damn it.
Oh my God, it's like a diploma.
Yeah, literally.
So your apprenticeship. How was that? How did you go about getting it first off? Did you go shop to shop or was it somebody you were getting tattooed by at the time?
A little bit of neither, actually.
Oh.
It was more of a, I guess like social media type thing at the time. It was someone I knew from social media. We had chit-chatted here and there. It was another female artist. I was like, we became friends and I was kind of back and forth to London at the time. I would have really loved to do my apprenticeship in London, but just with the visas and everything, it was too hard to like go into a shop and say like, hey, I'm looking for an apprenticeship, please, sir, please, sir. But I have to leave every 6 months to go back to America because I don't have a work visa. Also, I'm going to have to work under the table. Also, it was just too much of like a ask for someone. So she was like, well, if things don't work out in London, like you can always come to Colorado and this and that. And I was like, oh, okay, well.
So you did your apprenticeship in Colorado?
I did.
I didn't know that.
Well, there you go. Yeah, Colorado Springs. So
that's awesome.
It was a lot different than I initially expected it would be. It turned out like this person was a little more competitive than I would have liked. Yeah. She didn't really like that there was another female artist in the shop after the fact. Like I think she thought it would be really cool on paper, like, hey, I'm good enough at tattooing to have an apprentice. Yay, go me. It was like more like a gold medal for her than it was like an investment in teaching someone a trade or helping someone hone their craft. So I realized that very quickly on, like in the second and third month. And for people that don't know, like Colorado doesn't have like a wait time where you can't tattoo. You can just go straight into tattooing, just if anyone listening or watching.
It's like by county, they permit it.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it was literally like the fourth day I was at the shop I was tattooing.
I would have thrown up.
I had some
mixed feelings.
Tummy issues. The first probably 10 or 15 tattoos, I was like, oh.
Were you doing walk-ins?
No, it was more like I had to go around town and like scout potential clients, which was really awkward in a town I had just moved to. So I was like at coffee shops.
I want a tattoo.
Literally, yeah. I'm like going into coffee shops like, can I have an oat milk latte? Oh, by the way, do you want a free tattoo? Yes, sir, please. Like, it was just so like weird. And Oh God. But yeah, people will do anything for free tattoos. So they came and, you know, that's kind of how I started. But it was in those first like couple weeks. I mean, I was already just like, okay,
So
here you go. You're out into the world.
Learn anything?
Well, okay.
Like,
So in a
like some
roundabout
people like
way,
learn traditional because everybody's like, that's the original. You need to learn this. Like, that's
Sure.
what I did.
Right.
So like, did you do anything like that, or was she like, your art skills are fine? Tattoo.
it was basically that. So she like specialized in dot work tattooing, and that was something I was interested in learning. I've had like a lot of my tattoos do have like dot work and stippling in them, or hand poked, and those were all things I was like really interested in. And so for me, I felt like her style was something I would want to learn, you know, and that's kind of how I was already drawing on paper anyways. What I didn't know is that that was the only style she could do.
Oh.
And any other questions I had of like, hey, I want to try something more traditional, like you said, what kind of liner should I use? I don't know. What kind of, like, how should I blend this? Ask another artist. It was just like very much like every question I had, it was like a door in the face a little bit. So I very quickly like realized like, oh shit, maybe this isn't like gonna be as picturesque as I had imagined it to be. So there was times like really early on where she would just get up and leave and go home for a few hours while I was tattooing. Like,
that's so scary. I
remember my very first tattoo ever, and this is why I shied away from color for like probably the first 3 years of tattooing. It's because I had no foundation for it. I was doing like a rework of a guy's like, I still remember, I could like see it in my head. It's so crazy.
A rework, and how long had you been tattooing?
Maybe 3 months.
Oh my God, that's so
It was
scary.
like a graffiti armband that wrapped around, and like a lot of his color had fallen out, and it was like blues and greens and teals, and like I didn't know even if I should work dark to light on my colors. I didn't know anything about blending them, about doing any of that. And she was like, I'm gonna go home and check on the cats. I'll see you in a few hours, and just like pieced out at the start of the appointment. And I'm just like in the room with this person by myself, like trying to teach myself how to like, you know, tattoo basically.
At least it was free.
At least it was free. And it did look better than he came in.
That's
with
good.
It.
That's
but
good.
Still, I didn't feel like good about it because I didn't know if I was doing it right. I didn't help. Exactly.
What about was it a private studio, or did you not?
No. So that was actually my saving grace. Is like fast forward a few months later, a few of the guys in the shop had started to notice like, hey, this person's leaving you all the time, like by yourself. Are you okay? Do you need anything? And one of the guys there, his name's Jason. He's an awesome tattooer. He was like really specialized in traditional. He started tattooing later in his career, was pretty self-taught as well. So he kind of saw what was going on. He's like, if you ever want to try like any traditional pieces, like I will set time aside out of my schedule. We'll either book it at the end of my day, or I'll come in early and I'll sit down with you and watch you and give you feedback and stuff. So I was able to like start practicing other styles because the other artists were like taking me under their wings.
That's really nice though. That's great. At least that happened.
Yes, there was 2 guys that like I would accredit my success to at that shop. One was Jason that I just mentioned, and the other was Mike. And they both still tattoo in Colorado. They're excellent people, you know. So they really were my saving grace. Fast forward a few months into that apprenticeship, I finished the whole year in Colorado. It was the second guy I mentioned, Mike. Another instance had happened with my mentor at the time, where she kind of like fucked off and went to Europe for 3 or 4 weeks and was like, tattoo or don't, I don't care.
Whoa.
And I was like, okay, well, shit. So during this time, I had another friend. Sorry, there's so many players in the story.
Yeah.
It's like a...
No, I like it. It's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. So my other friend, Blaine, she was in Atlanta at the time, and we had met when she was in a guest spot in Colorado. And she sympathized with me because she had a bad apprenticeship and was kind of like a mentor figure to me, but she lived out of state. So she actually flew in and did a 2-week guest spot in Colorado to like essentially more or less like babysit me while my mentor was gone. So she tattooed in the same room I was in and like watched me the whole time and like gave me feedback. And that was like the first time I'd gotten like a ton of feedback for like 2 weeks straight. I was like, this is amazing. Like we come in at the same time, we leave at the same time. Like this is what it's supposed to be like. You know, she's giving me feedback on drawings, what works, what doesn't. So after she left, I was kind of on my own for like the last week, and I decided to sit down with the shop owner and explain to her like what was going on and ask if there's any like resolutions or like a way out or anything essentially. And she was like, if you can find someone else in the shop to transfer your apprenticeship to, we can do that, and I'll sit down and have a talk with this person because this is unacceptable and I didn't know this was going on. So then I pivot back to Mike, and he's like, yep, we can make it work. Yep, there's room in my booth, and his booth is like smaller than my booth is, and so I had like the massage table pulled into the corner, and I was like tattooing, like my chair was like set up in the back, and then he had his table, and I mean we were cramped in like freaking sardines, but he made it work. And every week he would like take me to breakfast or brunch on like a Saturday or Sunday, and we'd review the whole week. Like, how did you feel about last week? Let's look at your drawings for this week. Like, is there any questions you have? Or is there, and it felt like I was really being heard for like the first time.
And how many months was that into your apprenticeship? How long did it take for that to happen?
That was in October. I started in January. I switched to Mike in October.
That is a good amount of time.
It was.
That would feel really long.
It did.
In the moment. Yeah.
It sure did. It felt like a lot of fumbling, a lot of like second guessing, a lot of like going home and not feeling great about what you did all day and feeling kind of guilty about it. But yeah. So luckily, it ended on good terms. It ended, to where like I was happy with how things wrapped up. So yeah, that was that. And then I came to Oklahoma, I think in 2017 I came back, 2018 maybe. There was like a year and a half of gap between Colorado and Oklahoma, and I was like back and forth to London a little bit.
Oh, so did you tattoo during that year and a half?
I did, yeah.
So I want to ask you, since you were guest spotting in London, what is it like, the industries? How different are they from like America to London?
Yeah, the tattoo conventions there were like freaking next level. It's just amazing. Like you walk around and you're like, oh my God, there's that person I've like idolized for the entire last 10 years or something. Like you're just like walking around and you're like, oh wow. And there's people doing amazing bodysuits. There's people flying in from like Asia doing tabori tattoos at the conventions.
Oh my God,
like
that's fucking sick.
It's just amazing. It's so culturally diverse there, and like the type of like artistry that attracts is just, it was very cool. It was, I would say, a humbling experience because I left my year-long shitty apprenticeship and thought, hey, I'm ready to take London by storm. When you look back, you're like, wow, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But I also don't have any regrets about at least trying.
You think it influenced you, though?
I definitely think it influenced me.
Like early in your career.
It was so early in my career, and I felt like I was like a sponge. Like every piece of advice I got from everybody I worked with, it was like I was like soaking it all up. So the shop I ended up at it was a walk-in shop on a market street. It's called Roman Road Market, and every like Saturday and Sunday there would be tents popped up and down the whole street. And it was like a marketplace, like a flea market almost. So it was like a very like trafficked area and stuff for walk-ins. But the people I worked with, everyone was like from a different country in the shop. It was so cool. We had an Italian guy, a Scottish guy, an Irish girl, an Australian girl. The owner was a guy from Australia, me from America. It was like this whole like mix of just like all different people. Like everyone probably had at least 10 years experience on me. So that was really intimidating, but they weren't egotistical about it. Yeah. They weren't like, I know more than you. Like I wasn't necessarily treated as like other or anything like that. So yeah, it was a really cool experience. Yeah. All in all.
You were a little tatter tot to them.
Yeah, literally. They're like, oh, you're just a little baby. Okay. Like, how can we help you? Leave the nest. So yeah.
How did you end up meeting Wes and getting here though?
Okay. So Wes and I worked at a shop before Sacred Soul Collective, and the owner kind of like had split off and wanted to, I think, move to a smaller shop and stuff essentially. Wesley and I both lived like, I think 30, 40 minutes away. She was like in South OKC and I was like North Edmond. And so we were driving all the way to Oklahoma City and we're like, wait, we had just moved like closer to the city. Like, I don't remember exactly where she was living, but we were both now like in a 10-minute radius from the shop. And we're like, wait, we don't want to move again. So Wes is like, okay, I think I'm ready. We'll just open a shop. You come with me, because we already like know how we work together, and like there won't be any second guessing, and it'll just be easy. And I was like, okay, cool. So then I just kind of flew by the seat of my pants and went with Wes for the first Sacred Soul, which was off of 5th and Classen. It was small and tiny. It was just the two of us for the longest time, and then it's kind of like branched into what it is now. So.
It's beautiful and giant.
Yeah, it's been a crazy ride.
Yeah.
Like going from like a 800 or 1,000 square foot space to like now a 6,500 square foot space. So it's been really cool.
Do you like being around so many artists?
On most days, yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have my days where I like to be, a little quieter and like to myself. But I would say overall, 9 times out of 10, I love having other people around, because it's like, hey, let me pick your brain on this. Hey, what do you think of this? Like, you can show someone something with fresh eyes, and they can point out something that like maybe you didn't see in the hours you just spent drawing it. You know what I mean? So I do really like that aspect. Or if you need help putting on a big back piece, like a big stencil or something, like there's always like just built-in help and advice. So I do really appreciate that aspect.
Have you done any guest spots recently or traveled recently at all, or do you have plans to?
That's a great question. I haven't done anything super recently. The last thing I did was the convention in Oklahoma City.
The Villain
last
Arts
year.
one?
Exactly, yeah. So I did that, and that was my first time working a convention, which was really overwhelming, but a lot of fun. So I would like to do something like that again. As far as traveling for something like a convention, I don't think that's really in the cards for me, just because I'm such a homebody.
Yeah.
And like I like being with my little family and like going home early and chilling out and stuff like that. So there's just the added stress of traveling plus a convention. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. As far as guest spots, I've tried to make like a really conscious effort to like make my vacations not work related. So that's kind of like also out for me.
I love that you're doing that, because I'm going to Colorado and I'm like, I want to work.
Yes. And that was like what I used to do constantly. Like anytime I'd go back to Colorado, I'd like go back to either my home shop or a friend's shop or whatever. And then I was like, wait, I actually want to enjoy Colorado and like spend time with like the few friends that I do still have there, and like go hiking or, so I kind of tried to make that more of a effort.
A you time?
Yeah. Or like my friend Blaine that I had mentioned earlier, she's in Asheville now. And last time I went out to visit, she's like, you can guest spot if you want. I ended up just like hanging out at her house with her dog and like watching TV while she was at work. I was like, I think I'm good. I think I'm just going to relax.
That's nice though. Yeah, that sounds nice.
So I haven't done anything super recently, but I wouldn't say no, never. Just not right now.
Yeah, not currently.
Yeah.
You don't really post on social media.
I do not.
You are not big into that. You are constantly working though. So how do you, without the presence of social, all of my clients come from social media. I could not imagine not doing it unless I worked at maybe a walk-in shop. But even then, people are like, what's your Instagram? So
that is such a question. People say, they're always like that. And I have to like preface, like when I give a business card, I'm like, there's an Instagram on there, but I haven't posted on it in like 2 years. Here you go. But I do have a website now. So I think that should start to help like shift, because I've had a few people be like, hey, you don't post on Instagram. Do you still tattoo? And I'm like, having an Instagram is not a requirement of tattooing. Yeah. So yes, I do still tattoo, even though I don't post on Instagram. I did make the website though, so I can post like more of an updated portfolio.
Is it like more word of mouth though, how you get clients?
It seems to be more word of mouth. Like I find that I tattoo like a lot of people in the same friend group, and that like grows exponentially from there. So it seems to be just like a lot of word of mouth. I'm also like not super shy about when I'm out places. Like I could be at freaking 7-Eleven getting something. If someone's like, hey, I like your tattoos, I'm like, oh, here you go. And 9 times out of 10, those people might not be clients, but for every one,
you're getting your name out there.
Yeah, you're still getting your name out there and stuff like that. So I guess I don't really have a good answer for that, except for I just think it relies on like really loyal clientele and like word of mouth. So.
Why did you decide to make a website? What compelled you to do it?
I definitely felt like I needed something to be like, hey guys, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I know mostly shops have websites, but I don't see like a lot of individual tattoo artists doing websites. So I just thought it would be a good way to kind of keep everything streamlined. And if I ever decided to do merch one day, or if I ever wanted to do guest spots, like I could just have one place where I could post it all for people to like look on there and kind of see.
Was it a little overwhelming at all making it?
I actually hired someone to make it. So for
really?
me, no.
That's nice.
For me, it wasn't overwhelming. For her, I hope it wasn't.
Yeah.
So
that's really nice.
Yeah, I was pretty like streamlined with it. I was like, here's websites I like. Here's what I like about them. Here's websites I don't like. Here's what I don't like about them. And then I kind of told her all the components I needed to make it like functional, like a booking link where people can fill out my booking form and an aftercare tab.
I like that you do a booking form. I tried to do that and nobody did it. So
now you have to make them do it.
I do DMs now. It's all I do. I don't even like people emailing me. Like I have one client and she like goes through these phases where she's off of social media and then she's on social media. So then I'll get a random email from her because she has my email. Yeah, or then I'll get a random DM from her. And I'm like, which one are we using?
Yeah, you're like, I'm confused.
Yeah, so yeah, but I could not for the life of me get people to use that form. I had like maybe 7 people do it. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, and then after that, it was just, they just started DMing me. So I was like, I'll just do this.
You're like, I'll just
And it's honestly nice because everything's in one place, and Instagram has like a search bar now. So I'll ask people for their name, and then I'll just search it the day before, and then be like, hey, confirming our appointment.
So it's kind of like an integrated email into your social media.
Yeah, exactly. And I can even call them from there without giving out my number, which was like a big deal to me when I started. I did not want to give out my number.
Right. Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah. So. Did you do that whenever you started, or no? You'd always, what did you do when you started? Like email or Instagram?
Yeah, it was a little bit of Instagram, but mostly email still. So I've kind of just always been in the mindset of like emails. The shop I was at in Colorado, actually, they had front desk and like reception, so they could book stuff for you too. So that would be really nice because sometimes like I lived really close to the shop there too. They'd be like, hey, we've got 2 people that want to walk in. Like, are you busy? Are you doing anything? And like, I could just like jet up to the shop real quick. So having like the front desk and reception built in was really nice the first year, because then I could just like figure out the rest of my shit and not have to worry about booking on top of that. Because it's a whole other, like hat we have to wear.
Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. I mean, that's with everything though, you know? So I get that. I enjoy talking to people, but then sometimes I'm like, man, they can wait.
Right. Yeah. Because
I'm trying to have a life sometimes.
It's hard because you tattoo for, I usually try to be here 10 to 6. So I'm like, that's an 8-hour day.
Yeah. And then you get like, I get done tattooing, my phone is, and I was not popular in school. I mean, look at me. So I get on my phone and I'm like, this is really overwhelming.
Yeah. Because it feels like someone like always needs something and you're like, I need to just like take care of me for a second. Yeah. So,
and sometimes I've learned people like to talk and then not book anything, and then you just wasted a lot of your time.
Yeah, that's why I actually started doing the booking forms, because I'm like, if I can hammer this down from like taking 10 to 15 emails to book someone to like 2 or 3, so the booking form has everything they need. I send a response back with like, if I have any follow-up questions or like, hey, I love your references or anything like that, give them a time and a date. They're like, yes, that time and date works. And then it's pretty much like I can get them booked in like 4 to 5 emails instead of like going back and forth. Because inevitably people forget
oh my God, in DMs, it'll go for like long periods of time. But sometimes it's been good like talking to people, because then we find we have common interests. Like I had a girl and her tattoo artist who was going to do a Paramore tattoo on her was like, sorry, I can't, and just canceled with her. And she's like, well, you like Paramore and you tattoo me. Will you just do it?
And you're like, yeah, I will.
And I was like, we talked about that. So that's really cool. It leads to more tattoos. Oh, what was the biggest piece of advice you've gotten in the industry? Because you've been to London, you've traveled, you were in Colorado, now you're here. And
biggest piece of advice.
Yeah.
Let me think on that for a second. I think one of the bigger pieces of advice I've kind of gotten all around was just like having boundaries with work. I know that's not necessarily art related, but several tattooers who had been tattooing longer than me were like, kind of like, don't let anyone railroad you. Don't do things that you don't want to do. And I had trouble in the beginning of my career saying no to things that like now I would instantly be like, no, we can't do that. Like people that want something too small, or they saw it on Pinterest, or essentially like clients that convince you that they know better, even though you do this as a career.
Yeah.
In the first like 1 to 2 years, it was really hard for me, because I'm like, oh, well, that's what they want. Even if like deep down I was like, this isn't going to be good. So just having those kind of boundaries, and same with like the emailing and booking process. Like I'm pretty upfront that it takes me at least 2 weeks to get back to people. if they can't respect that, then
do you do your booking in like segments at all?
I
Like every
typically
3
try
months,
to.
or,
I'm off on it right now, but yeah, I try to book for a 3 to 4 month period and then close and then reopen. So
do you ever get worried that like, oh my God, that's so far in the future? Like, because people forget, people like don't have money, cancel and everything.
True. I'd say not for like the shorter time frames. Now, if I was booking out a year, which I know some people do that and it works great for them, that would make me anxious because like, what if something comes up? What if there's a really cool concert I want to go to? What if there's like a last minute weekend trip that me and my girlfriend want to go on?
How do you plan your life if
like,
you're planning your work that far ahead?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's like, you don't want to cancel on people and then have to put them a year out, or at least that's how I look at it. And that's just what's always worked for me, is like kind of 3 to 4 month chunks. Cause like I usually know what I'm doing in the next 3 to 4 months, travel wise and other stuff usually. So,
do you take deposits at all, or?
I actually stopped taking deposits during COVID, which is like a super unpopular opinion. Wouldn't necessarily recommend it one way or the other. It just seemed like one extra thing for me to keep track of.
Yeah, I agree. It's difficult.
It's hard. And then especially like the clients that I have like a really long standing relationship with, I'm like, I know without a shadow of a doubt they're going to be at their appointment. And so for me, it just felt like just something I didn't feel like keeping up with.
Yeah.
Does that mean I'll never do deposits again? Not necessarily. It's just one more thing on the never ending list of things for us to do.
For you to figure out.
Yeah, it's just one less thing.
Yeah. How did you come up with your style? Because you were doing so many different things when you started tattooing. How did you like meld into what you do now? Like there's a transition one day. How did that transition happen? Did you slowly integrate the style that you wanted to do into your tattoos? Or were you like, I'm doing this for free, it's practice?
A little bit of both, actually. Like I remember in the very beginning being so scared of any kind of script or lettering. I was just like paranoid I was going to misspell it, or it wouldn't look like.
That's literally me.
Right?
like, I won't do it. Here's a friend.
It's so scary in the beginning. So you're like, this is so recognizable. Everyone recognizes like what letters are supposed to look like.
The font kind of scares me sometimes when people pick out fonts. I'm like, oh,
I know. You're like, no, you can't do that. No, not that font. No. So in the beginning, I would like do like free stuff like that for sure, just to be like, hey, help me help you. Yeah. Or I had like a friend once he was getting most of his arm blacked out anyways. So he's like, you can do whatever you want underneath it, and then you can practice blacking it out. And I was like, okay. So we did like script. I think I tried like a traditional dagger, which was super ugly. Sorry.
It's gone now.
It's gone now. It's blacked out now. Yeah. So he like let me practice a lot of stuff like that. So I would say just kind of picking and piecing things like, oh, I really want to try that, until you get to a point where you're like, oh, this is what I like to do. Yeah. Like, and I don't think I really settled into that until I was like able to have enough clients to kind of pick and choose the projects that spoke to me more. I think in the beginning, it's kind of like you almost not take anything that comes your way, but it's like not as specialized. I'm
definitely more open to being like, yeah, I'll do that. Just so I can do it and say I've done it and try it. Because I don't know if I'm good at it or if I don't like it until I've done it. But yeah, sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, no, I won't.
No, there's certain things I'm like, I can't touch that with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. So, and I won't even try to. So.
Yeah, exactly. So what was your biggest, since you really weren't like sat down with and taught for a while, what was your biggest hurdle with tattooing that you had to get around, and like how long did that last, and when did it like click for you? Because I hear a lot of tattooers that are like, when I ask people questions, they're like, it's hard to explain. You just have to keep doing it until it clicks for you. What was like your clicking moment where like something was difficult and then it was like, oh my gosh, this is
getting easier? Yeah. Okay, there was probably a few moments like that. I think one of the things in the beginning was like just not having anyone to answer, like, what needle size should I use? What should I do with this? What should I do with that? So once I started getting a grasp on like, this sounds silly, but like, oh, this needle makes this size line. And like, that was like a big moment to when I didn't have to like open my drawer and like second guess 50 different times of like, should I use a 3-round liner or a 5-round liner? What if the 3 is too, well, is it going to blow out? You have that like overthinking thing. So like that probably happened within the first year for sure. Once I was out from under the first mentor, I was kind of like, had that security of like, I know what I'm doing. I know at least what needles I'm using. I might not know what else I'm doing, but I at least know that. So that was like a first moment where I was like, okay, I feel confident in my choices leading up to the tattoo, which is really nice to finally feel that. And then with other things, like I think it just came probably around like the second year or so. Like the more opportunity I had to work with different types of people, different styles of art, being in different shops, and just repetition. I don't think there was like a moment where like I had a day where I was like, oh, I feel not so good about tattooing. And then I woke up the next day and I was like, everything's amazing. I know exactly what I'm doing. Like it wasn't like a split second kind of moment. I think it just was a gradual progression for me. And there's still things even like to this point, they're very few and far between, but every once in a while you get really nervous about something, whether it's, you know, the placement or whatever. You're just kind of like, ooh, I just feel a little bit nervous about that. So it does, I don't think it ever goes away fully. And I think if it does, you should be scared. Yeah. Because you're not evolving or growing at that point, in my opinion.
How do you like get around burnout and, you know, tattooing every single day being your job? Like, is it never not fun?
I'd say with any career, there's aspects of it that can be less fun than others. Managing burnout, I try to do things outside of work that really like either spark my creativity or like keep me moving. I like to do things like with my hands a lot. So outside of work, I try to do things that are kind of opposite to tattooing. I like to like build things a lot. I like to work with wood. I like to like something 3-dimensional to where I have like a end product where I'm like, oh, cool. That's awesome. Because it is like, I still like to be very tactile and like creative and stuff like that, but something less tedious than tattooing and something where I'm like using my whole body instead of like being hunched over like a straining my eyes. Oh my gosh. So like doing woodworking projects or like building a shed in my backyard or landscaping or just whatever other things I can get my hands on that keep me busy, but I also feel accomplished at the end of it. So I think part of it is I'm just a little bit of a busybody. So I'm always just kind of like, ooh, it's like a shiny thing. That, you know, like I'm always finding new hobbies or new interests.
Do you ever feel bad then whenever you're like relaxing? You're like, ooh, I should be doing something.
All the time.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
Any business owner I feel like feels that way because that's what we are as tattooers, as small business owners. Essentially, we operate and do everything.
I didn't want to work a 9 to 5. Now I work all the time.
Literally,
but it's fantastic.
It is because you have all the other freedoms and like happiness and all of that. But there's a lot of like guilt around that, and honestly, just there's been certain podcasts and probably like self-help books I've listened to that I'm like, okay, I can just relax and do nothing. And I'm getting better at it. That's something like my partner's definitely helped me out a lot with is like, hey, you don't have to do everything all the time. Calm down. And I'm like, okay, I can't just like binge watch a show for 4 hours and it's fine. Like my emails aren't going to explode. The shop's not going to catch on fire. Like that's going to be fine.
I like to talk about on this podcast a lot, like mental stability and how people got that to that point. Because I know a lot of tattooers I've talked to struggle with like anxiety and depression. I want to be more open about it because a lot of the podcasts I listened to during my hours were male dominated, like not really about that aspect. And like also like, you know, you have a little family, your dog mom, and you have some cats, I believe, right? So like balancing that and work and like trying to make time for your partner, it's difficult. So what do you do to like mentally hone yourself in?
I would say the biggest thing is therapy, honestly. I'm a huge advocate for therapy, which is really funny because when I first moved back to Oklahoma, one of my really good friends, Lucky, was like, you should consider therapy because I think it would really help you a lot. And I was like, I don't need therapy. That means something's wrong with me. I'm not going to therapy. I like kind of like turned my nose up at the idea. And then like a few months went by and I was like, maybe that would be kind of cool to just like have someone to talk to about things in a non-biased like environment. And like, and I've been with the same therapist for like 4.5 years now. And even if things aren't as chaotic in life, I'll still go like every 6 to 8 weeks. Like I used to go weekly and now we've kind of backed off. But it helps just having that like little anchor, I guess.
Do you feel like it's provided you tools with how to deal with stuff in the real world?
1,000%. And like when I look at like how I handle stressful situations now to like 3 or 4 years ago, I'm like, I feel like it's rewired kind of my thinking a lot in a good way. And it was actually my therapist that suggested moving to booking forms because I was getting overwhelmed with work to the point where I was like in tears. Like trying to sit down and do emails, I would be like in tears. And my therapist was like, why don't you incorporate some kind of booking form? She's like, other places do that. Like doctor's offices has like patient forms you have to fill out. She's like, isn't there some kind of like online thing where you could build it to be tattoo specific? I'm like, it didn't occur to me she could give me like business advice too. I mean, not that she's like a business advisor or anything, but I was like, oh, and that like changed so much because it really helped me like compartmentalize. And the other thing I would say that helped a lot, again, this goes back to those boundaries, is like not having anything on my phone. My email's not logged in on my phone, my work email. Of course, like I've been off social media, but none of the social media apps are on my phone at all. So I don't have a tether to work on my phone. My phone is just my phone for people that I know and nothing else. So I don't ever have to like look at my phone and feel like, oh God, well, I was going to call my mom back, but now I have to answer these 10 emails, you know? So I'd say that like having that separation was a big thing, and that like took a big load off like mentally. Other thing is like being open to, you know, anxiety or depression medication if you need to be. Like there's such a stigma around that that's going to make you like zombified or like not yourself or anything like that. But I think sometimes we just have a little bit of a mental imbalance, and sometimes we need help for it. Like I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of or anything like that. So those are my two tools that I rely on pretty heavily. So
that was a fantastic answer. I think you're the first person who's talked about therapy, and I love that. Yeah, that's great.
Everyone needs a therapist. At least once in your life for a few months. Everyone needs it.
So you're off of social media. What made you decide like I just want to detox myself from it? Because it's a thing.
I think
whether positive or negative, I think mainly negative.
That's the thing. I do miss some of the positive aspects of it, like the networking kind of side of it, and like just seeing like, I don't know what anybody here is tattooing at all ever unless you like come up and show me, which is kind of why I try to like peek around. I'm like, oh, what are you working on today? Oh, how was that project you did the other day? Oh, you were tattooing someone's neck. How did that go?
Honestly, I kind of like parading my client around. I'm like, look at it.
You look at it. Like SpongeBob. Look at it. So I do miss some of the positive aspects of like getting inspiration and stuff like that. But I think my biggest thing was like during COVID, I was comparing myself to everybody all the time. And of course, like in Oklahoma, we were shut down for 6 weeks. And I would see people on Instagram like doing large scale paintings and like making these amazing drawings. And I just didn't feel like doing anything. I didn't feel like being creative. I felt depressed. I felt awful. Everything was horrible. COVID was scary. Like everything was just like very unsure and like very unstable feeling. And so then I felt even more guilty because other tattooers were like doing large scale amazing pieces. And I was just like sitting in my room doing Duolingo and trying to teach myself how to code because I was so bored. But I didn't want to do art stuff.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But at the time I was just like, everyone else is doing it. There must be something wrong with me.
I feel that way a lot.
Like all these other tattooers are doing cool stuff. They're still being creative. Like, why am I not?
I definitely feel that way more so as an apprentice too, because I see my friends who are apprentices, or even people on Instagram who've been tattooing longer than me, supposedly. I don't know their life outside of it, and I'm like, they're coming out of the gate like this, and I feel lesser than, or I'm like comparing myself.
There's a lot of self-comparison.
Yes.
That's why I chose to step away. It was like, I don't want to, as artists, like there's a lot of times that we don't like what we do anyways, just because we're self-critical. Like I don't need that added extra layer of like them comparing it to everybody else that's better at tattooing than me, supposedly, you know, like we're our own worst critics, and I don't need any extra help creating a negative narrative.
How do you think it's been for your mindset getting off of social media?
Oh my God, so much better. So much better. Yeah, just so much better.
Yeah.
I don't think there's like anything I would change about that aspect of my journey for sure. It was time for it to go. And then especially like taking the apps off my phone. At first I thought I was doing like a 1 month reset. I was like, I'm doing this for a month.
And now it's been 2 years.
Yeah. And then after a month I was like, oh, I actually feel like more clear mentally. I don't feel like as depressed.
Did you get
I have more
stuck
time
on
for
it
things.
At all? Did you get stuck on it at all? Like you just sit there and just
doom scroll? Especially during like the COVID year.
Yeah.
The COVID year. because there's nothing to fucking do. Like everybody's isolating. You're fucking locked up in your house. So I just be on. That was when I finally got TikTok. So I feel like I was like, late to the TikTok game. And then it would have those like videos of like, you've been scrolling too long. You need to go to sleep. I'm like, no, I haven't. Leave me alone. And then you like look up and you're like,
those videos are passive aggressive.
They can be.
Oh my God. I put a timer on my Instagram recently because I was like, I'm spending too much. I looked at my activity and I was like, this is concerning.
Yeah.
So I put it, and now it's like every 30 minutes it'll tell me, and then every hour it'll tell me, like, and it makes me angry when I see it. I'm like, what? Why are you telling me this?
The time goes by like this, and
it does. You don't even realize it's been that long until it tells you, and it's actually made me get off of it now, because I'm like, oh shit, really? It's been 30 minutes. Oh my God.
It brings your awareness to it a little bit.
It does.
More.
I still get a little irritated. I'm like, Instagram, fuck off.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say to that is like, you're also using it for work though too, so keep that in mind, because I don't like, when I go to my laptop, I'm not like, oh man, I spent 3 hours on my laptop. I'm like, okay, this is for work only.
See, the thing is I have like a personal Instagram and a like Instagram for art, so I will be on my personal Instagram scrolling through reels, and it's different.
Never mind, then I take it all back.
Yeah, my Instagram for work is like 30 minutes to 2 hours a day, maybe. It depends on the day. Weekends it's longer, but like my one for like my personal, this is super difficult to say, was like 4 to 6 hours.
You know, that it's pretty common.
Bob's Burgers, Instagram reels.
There you
go. Yeah. And all at once.
I just feel like at the end of it, like when I was on TikTok doing that for like hours in like 2020 or 2021, it's like after the 4 hours goes by or however long, I'm like, what did I even just like absorb? Like, I don't even I could hardly remember anything.
Or like you're like, one more, because you watched one that actually like did something for you. So you're like, I need one more like that.
Dopamine.
Yeah, exactly.
Please,
but you have to scroll through like 20 to 30 shitty ones in order to find that one that like makes clicks, you laugh or does something to you. Yeah.
Or it's like sentimental or heartwarming. And,
yeah, exactly. So. Or sometimes Instagram like pops off with like stuff to, I feel like, make you feel bad on purpose.
See, it's just they're manipulating.
Yeah. No, definitely negative things. So during COVID, how was that, like tattooing? So like going from tattooing to, oh my God, we have to isolate, to then going back to tattooing. Man, I haven't ever asked anybody about that. You're probably my first person.
So it was just me and Wes at the time. There might have been a third artist when I can't remember if Benet was there yet or not, but it was me and Wes for sure. And it was like, okay, everyone, we're closing for 6 weeks. And we were like, kind of texting like, oh God, okay, what, help? And then making the transition from that 6 weeks of like, literally the best way I could describe it is I felt like a ghost. I was like haunting my house, my own house, like floating from room to room. Like, is there anything to do in here? Yeah. No. Like, you know, when you check the fridge and you're like, is there anything new in here? That was me like in my house for 6 weeks. Took the time to rewatch TV series I'd never watched, and so there were good aspects of it too. But transitioning back into tattooing, it was like a lot of guilt of like, is this reckless? Is this like a horrible thing to do? Is this well, we have bills to pay. Like,
were you even like more aware of like germs? Because I feel like after COVID, I was like disgusted. Even now, I went to Rocklahoma and there were so many people there. I was like, I hope I don't get sick. I literally got COVID when I came back. I was so irritated. Like,
it does. It makes you like more aware. And I think like also because of our gloving techniques and everything, the thing that really drove me crazy during COVID was like everyone in the grocery stores with the gloves, then touching the things, then going in their purse, then touching their phone, and then touching their face. I'm like, so you just...
What was the point of the gloves? Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like one of the things that I was like, kind of made my eye twitch a little bit. I'm like, okay. But yeah, moving back into tattooing, it was just kind of, we had to be really rigorous with like certain protocols. Like in the beginning, we had everyone wash their hands when they came in, wipe their phone with like alcohol, like towelette thingy, use hand sanitizer, wipe down the clipboards and pens every time someone did intake paperwork. We wouldn't allow people to bring any guests at all. Like usually, you know, people can bring a friend or two to hang out, and that's great and it's fun. It kind of takes the pressure off you as a tattooer, you know, but we couldn't do any of that. And so it was just like a lot of like guilt surrounding like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right choice? But we kind of also didn't have another choice. Yeah. Because
You needed to make money.
You have to make money.
I think my last question to ask you is, and I ask everybody this at the end of the podcast because everybody gives different answers.
Okay.
What is your advice to somebody wanting to come into the industry, especially females and queer people in the industry? What would be your advice to them of how to get in and, you know, how to work through hurdles? Because it is really difficult.
It is extremely difficult. I would say... Man, that's such a loaded question because I feel like nobody has a good apprenticeship. Well, most people, I feel like. Out of everyone you've interviewed, how many of the 14 have said they?
Yeah, but probably like only like one person. And it might not have been like the best, but like they're good with it.
Right. Yeah. And that seems to be like industry standard.
Yeah, it's like the consensus, I feel like, with most people.
I would say if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Like if someone's just willing to take you on instantly, or they're asking for, I don't know, a ton of things up front, like, or it just sounds like too good of a deal to be true, then it probably, like, maybe there's some underlying, like, they just want free labor, or they just want someone to boss around, or like some of those types of things. I would say definitely, like, for queer and people of color, to find a shop that feels safe, find a mentor that feels safe. Like if you go in and like you're the only like female identifying person or the only person of color, then it's probably not going to be a great work environment. I mean, depending, that's such a generalization, but I don't know. Those types of things, I would say just like keep an eye out for, or like the kind of like hazing techniques that a lot of old school shops tend to use with apprentices, of like just like bullying people into submission essentially, or like doing things that have nothing to do with tattooing. Like I don't ever think apprentices should like have to go get lunch for everybody and then wash the owner's car and then do all this other stuff that has nothing to do with tattooing. I'm like not a big proponent of that. So ideally it would be someone that you were getting tattooed by, that you have a respect for their art style already. It's not always going to happen that way though.
How do you think they should go about it? Like, I like build a portfolio, or like how do you think? Because a lot of people will ask me who are in my same age range,
right? And you're like,
they like don't draw. So like my thing, I told them is have a portfolio, because that's like that's the only thing I did correctly. I think. Yeah. I didn't know anything, so
right, and it's just like, hey, here's some things I did. Help, please, sir. I would definitely say you have to have a portfolio. Like that would be another kind of weird thing if you went into a shop with no portfolio and they were like, yeah, you're good to go. I would say huge red flag. Like they just want free labor, or they want to take advantage of you somehow, some way. Don't trust that. I would say definitely have a portfolio where you have like many different art styles if you can, but definitely like what you would want to lean more towards. Like people that have already been artists for years and draw all the time, like they usually already have kind of a curated style. Yeah. I would say like showcase that in your portfolio, and then maybe try some other things that are like tattoo friendly, like American trad designs, or like little, for lack of a better word, like Pinteresty things, like little, like a crystal cluster and like a little,
have an array of options.
Exactly.
I think that's what I wish I would have done, because I only had portraits and people were like,
I would say having like a wide range of like, hey, I'm versatile, because like that's the biggest thing as a tattooer is like if you like put yourself too much in a box, you're kind of limiting yourself.
Yeah, so that's a really great answer.
Yeah. I would say just kind of try to be as like versatile as possible and give more options, I guess. Yeah. But I have as a side note, a friend of mine that tattoos in Asheville, the way she set up her apprenticeship program was like geared towards folks that are maybe like not in the like highest economic bracket essentially, and she pays them hourly to be there.
That's fantastic.
Because she feels like they take it more seriously when they're being treated like it's a job. That's like, great. Hey, I'm paying you X amount hourly. You're here drawing for these 6 hours that I'm paying you to draw for, essentially.
Do you think ever in your career you'll have an apprentice, or want to take that hurdle on? Because it is on both parts a big commitment, and personalities and all that. I mean, there's a lot of eggs in that basket.
There really is. So. Yeah. I would say I don't see it anytime in the near future for me, just because there's other things I'd rather like focus on, like traveling and other stuff at the moment. And I don't want to do what happened to me to someone else. Like I don't want to get an apprentice and then be like, oh, deuces, I'm going to Europe
Yeah.
for 3 weeks, or any of those things. Like I would want to be able to like fully invest if I ever chose to do that. And it would just really have to be like the right time, right place, like right person kind of thing.
Yeah.
So to fully take someone on from like start to finish, I just feel like
it's a big commitment,
especially in Oklahoma because it's 2 years. So it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't ever want to leave someone like high and dry or in a place where they felt like they didn't have adequate resources or support or anything like that. So I think for me, it wouldn't be a quick decision. It would be something over time, over several more years of time. So
yeah, that's a great answer. I appreciate all your answers. I appreciate being on the podcast.
Heck yeah.
Will you tell them where you're located, where they can book you at and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name's Miranda. I'm at Sacred Soul Collective, located near downtown Oklahoma City. My website is tattooingbymiranda.com. There's links to the booking form on there, as well as any frequently asked questions, aftercare suggestions, and like portfolio pieces. So
I'll put that down in the description so that they can go ahead and do that. Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, of course.
Yay!